The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Jesus told his disciples this parable. A man going on a journey called in his servants and entrusted his possessions to them. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to a third 1, to each according to his ability. Then he went away. Immediately, the one who received 5 talents went and traded with them and made another 5. Likewise, the one who received 2 made another 2. But the one who received 1 went off and dug a hole in the ground and buried his master's money. After a long time, the master of these servants came back and settled accounts with them. The one who had received 5 talents came forward, bringing the additional 5. He said, "Master, you gave me 5 talents. See, I have made 5 more." His master said to him, "Well done, my good and faithful servant. Since you are faithful in small matters, I will give you great responsibilities. Come, share your master's joy." Then the one who had received 2 talents also came forward and said, "Master, you gave me 2 talents. See, I have made 2 more." His master said to him, "Well done, my good and faithful servant. Since you are faithful in small matters, I will give you great responsibilities. Come, share your master's joy." Then the one who had received the 1 talent came forward and said, "Master, I knew you were a demanding person, harvesting where you did not plant and gathering where you did not scatter. So out of fear, I went off and buried your talent in the ground. Here it is back." His master said to him in reply, "You wicked, lazy servant. So you knew that I harvest where I did not plant and gather where I did not scatter. Should you not then have put my money in the bank, so that I could have got it back with interest on my return? Now then, take the talent from him and give it to the one with 10. For to everyone who has, more will be given, and he will grow rich. But from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. And throw this useless servant into the darkness outside, where there will be wailing and grinding of teeth." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord.
$217,500. How would you like to be given $217,500? Or more precisely, to be entrusted with $217,500 of somebody else's dollars? That's 15 years' worth of full-time minimum wage employment in Indiana. And that's what a talent was. That unit of currency was a huge sum of money. 15 years' worth of day laborer pay. And that's what the least trusted servant is entrusted with. $217,500, 1 talent. When the master we hear about in the gospel is doling out these sums of money, it's not always clear to us what meaning they carry. It sounds like maybe we're talking about a small coin. And going back and doing a little economic history this week, wasn't just me indulging my geeky side. It was, but it wasn't just that. It was also a step in appreciating the greatness and the grandeur of God's grace. Of course, that means that the other two servants got entrusted with $435,000 and $1,087,500 respectively, 2 talents and 5 talents. But that's not what we're meant to focus on. In fact, the parable shows us that it's ruinous to focus on what others are entrusted with, at least when it distracts us from marveling at what we've been entrusted with. God invites us to recognize first what we've been given, to come to appreciate how absurdly valuable all we've been given is, and grow in wonder, love, and awe at the one who bestowed it upon us. Our rector in the seminary would often tell us that the 11th commandment really should have been, "Thou shalt not compare." Because once we start comparing, relationships that could have been beautiful instead become zero-sum, win-lose games. We start comparing what we have, what we've achieved with someone else, and either we notice that we have more than them and we win and end up proud, or we notice that we have less than them and we lose and end up jealous. And either way, we lose. The root out of that is gratitude. Gratitude that starts by marveling at what we have been given, and that maybe if we build up that foundation, can extend to looking at what others have been given and simply being grateful for how gifted they are. The third servant in the parable cannot do this. He looks at the $217,500 he's been entrusted with and sees only what it's not. Not $1 million, not even 400,000. $217,500 becomes measly in his eyes because of jealousy. And so he responds with fear. His image of his master becomes plagued with fear of his imagined wickedness. And so he buries, he hides, he takes the fortune he's been entrusted with and puts his lamp under a bushel basket. Worse than laziness, he succumbs to fearful inactivity. He's like the foolish virgins from last week's gospel, who had access to enough oil, but refused to go get it and burn it. But this parable goes a little deeper into the character's psychology than last week's. All we hear about the foolish virgins is that they're foolish. With this servant, we learn more. We learn that he was afraid. And we learn that he was afraid because he was insecure and jealous. He has not heard, "Do not be afraid, I am with you." Unless we simply end up chiding him, shaking our heads and moving on, let's remember that he's a character in one of Jesus' parables. He hasn't heard the gospel. He hasn't heard the good news. He hasn't heard the Sermon on the Mount. We have. We've heard, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted." We've heard Jesus' assurance that God will minister to all the suffering, will comfort those who grieve. And that assurance, that promise of divine help for those who suffer, is also a prompt or a prod for those who hold back, for those who don't invest their love in anyone else out of fear that loved ones will let them down, or suffer, or die, and cause them grief. Jesus bids us live lives of daring love, not because love never causes pain, but because every tear stain becomes a place of tender embrace as God wipes it clean. The most precious gift we have been given, far more valuable than $217,500, is the capacity to love and to be loved. We were made from and for love. And loving is risky. And fear and jealousy and pride and insecurity can lead us to put up walls and not risk it. Jesus speaks with one voice in the Beatitudes, in last week's parable, and in this week's. Risk loving. Risk letting your light shine. Invest the gift that you are in a daring life of virtue, not because that's easy, not because that will be free of suffering, but because God's got you. There is, in the end, nothing to fear. And how do we get there? How do we get to that place of trust where we can give thanks for our gifts by using them? I think we build up our trust for the future by building up our gratitude for the past, bringing to mind times when we know God took care of us. That might sound very complicated, very grandiose, something for people much more special than us. But it's very simple. The image that's been coming to my mind this week as I prayed with these readings is a memory of back when we could still visit each other's homes and I could see kids playing. I remember 2 children repeatedly running to the edge of their porch and leaping off into their father's arms, who caught them every time. There was no fear. There was no comparing who could judge further, who could jump further or higher, who was held tighter or longer. There was only joy shared and trust enough to take a leap of faith.